All right, let's get into it. Give him a call.
What up?
What up?
Early ass.
What's that?
I said you early ass.
Right? You should be happy.
You doing it. Yeah, normally I would be, dude. I'm just beating my head against the wall about this shit, dude. It's driving me bananas. So, I'm not. Just picked up Chipotle. I'm on my way, en route to De Casa.
So either your Google Drive is out of storage and you don't know it,
Wouldn't it say that, though?
I don't know. You might.
Out of storage?
I don't know. I don't think so. It might just give you an error. Like, it might just give you, like, the exclamation point error when trying to upload. Well, actually, you're not even trying to upload to Google Drive. So you would have to go to Google Drive, to your Google Drive, to see, like, how many out of how many gigs you have available still.
I feel like there wasn't that many, I hadn't used that much of it. But, could I just download it to, I wonder if I can just do it straight to the iCloud, because that's how we did it before, right? With the whole project. So why couldn't I just do the MP3?
No, because I already told, that's why I haven't sent you all your masters, because your iCloud's full too, remember?
Oh, yeah. How the fuck is that? Dude, come on.
Dude, you got a full cloud. You gotta make it rain. You can't hold it all in like that.
That's what I'm saying, dude. What kind of fucking cloud do I got on over here? How do I upgrade my cloud?
I don't know how to upgrade your cloud.
There's got to be a way, right, to get more storage?
Probably. Usually you trade money for such a thing.
Money trading.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of such things. Oh my god.
Why does that always happen? What is that?
It's because my phone is hooked up to my car.
It sounds like I passed go. Like, it sounds like I'm now on lap 2 out of 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just my phone telling me I got a text message from my wife. It's probably an angry text message saying, "Where the fuck are you?" it's probably saying the podcast starts at 9. Where are you? Probably
Awesome.
Yeah, that's probably actually what's happening right now as we speak. So, yeah. Are you at record setup right now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me, with driving? Should we do this thing while driving, or should I?
I mean, we can, yeah. It's are you...
I'm 5 minutes... I'm 5 minutes from home. I mean, we can... If you want to hold off, we can. I'm pretty damn close to home. Maybe not 5. I'm going to say 7 minutes. I'm going to say 7 minutes from home.
And so with that, welcome to the next episode of
All right,
Stuff You Wouldn't Say Out Loud. Where Mike tries to figure out what a cloud is and how to get a bigger one.
Yeah, dude, I need my cloud upgraded.
Oh.
Not these tiny little clouds I have going on here.
Well, the way you should do that is you should probably pray to God.
Yeah, dude, praying has helped people in the past get bustier things.
Oh, that's interesting. It would be interesting to know if it actually has or hasn't, but I don't know of a way to track those stats down, or if they even exist, because they don't.
Yeah, there's not much data. I did a little research on this, and there is some data related to the power of prayer in healing and things like that, because that's, I think, they're probably the most measurable way. But it always kind of comes back to it possibly being psychosomatic. But I don't know, man. I kind of call bluff on that. Oh shit! I kind of call bluff on that because in healthcare, we teach that spiritual, like we're all about like this thing called holistic healthcare, which means like we don't only treat you physically, like your physical ailments, but also your mental, emotional, psychological, and spiritual
Sure.
health. And we consider all of those like spokes, if you will, equally important to one another. So, I mean, what is the point then if we're putting
How do you measure
emphasis
someone's spiritual well-being? Like, what are you looking at for that?
So, actually, this is funny you say that. I was, for a while, a spiritual care coordinator. That was my job, was making sure that we were... I'm not even kidding, dude.
I know. It just sounds so fucking ridiculous.
Dude, right? I was a spiritual care coordinator. I literally, like...
We need to get more spirits up in this bitch.
Right, like, hey, we need some healing down here. God, let's make it happen. I'm ordering 6 miracles, and also, like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, dude. Like, it seems like in a science that would almost be an oxymoron, but it's not. It's not. It's you know, especially like with end stage, like any disease patients, like any chronically ill patients who, you know, like are going to be passing away, like sooner rather than later.
Right.
Like, we put a huge emphasis on spiritual care because it really does like add to that. Like, if nothing else, sense of well-being, calmness, like acceptance, which is a big part of like what we talk about with like hospice care and things like that. Is like people like being like able to accept, you know, kind of their fate, if you will. Like, I guess that's a shitty way of putting it, but like accept like the hands are dealt, you know, like this is what it's going to be. And a lot of people, even who, you know, are agnostic or I wouldn't say, I don't know, some atheists are pretty hardcore, but like at least a lot of agnostics I've seen turn to not necessarily religion, but spirituality, like when faced with that, you know, their own mortality. Like, they pray to it's almost like second nature to, like, if you ever gotten to like a situation where you're like, dude, I am fucking dead. Like that, like split second right before a car accident or something and you find yourself praying to like just anything, you know what I mean? Like you just like almost second nature find yourself praying, like, please just let this work out, like, please don't let me die, you know what I mean? Kind of thing. Like,
when we did acid, do you remember that? Yeah. I mean, I can say that we did that in Orlando, Florida. I don't think that's an issue.
We did. It was fantastic. We saw a rocket launch on acid, which was amazing.
It was, it wasn't fantastic for me. I had a horrible time. I
thought it was two hits of window pane. I was a fucking
right.
I was a happy camper, needless to say.
And I went to the bathroom. This is when I knew it was going downhill. Right, like we were playing music. You were sunburnt. You had.
I look like a lobster.
You didn't have long hair, but you had down, not maybe like midway down your neck, right? Like not, and every time I would look over, we were playing music, and every time you would consistently look more and more like Cleveland Indians Chief Wahoo, and it got to the point where I had to stop playing music. I had to stop recording, and I think that recording's somewhere out there, where I just say like, hey, I gotta stop. This is weird. And I remember I got up, I went to the bathroom, and when I walked back out of the bathroom, you weren't in my studio apartment. You weren't in there at all, and so my mind immediately was like, right, because you're dying. Like, he never came, you know, down here. He was never here to begin with. And I fell into that loop, and so then from there I went back into the bathroom, and when I went back into the bathroom, I threw up. And when I threw up, it looked to me like I threw up like an acidic, like an acidy liquid, because while waiting for our acid to be delivered, we downed a bottle of Patron. So So I did not realize that I'm throwing up Patron, which obviously isn't helping the trip. And that's what it was. And so from there, I kind of collected myself, walked back out, and there you were, sitting on what I had a futon at the time. And I just remember looking at you wide-eyed and like, where the fuck were you? And you
were not very happy, dude. You were not
and you were like I went outside for a cigarette, and you blew my mind by saying that. You blew my mind by like reminding me that there is more than that one room. I was like, that's crazy. That is like, hold on.
Another world out there, man.
And I immediately went back into the bathroom and puked again. And that's when I was in there, and that's when I had my moment of like, okay, God, if you're there, I just need to make it through this night. Like, I will never do acid again. And everything sucked that whole night though, because I was trying to find the weed, because I was like, oh, if we can just smoke weed, then everything will be all right. I'll calm down. And I bought like a half ounce or something, and I could not find it. And I thought that I left it in my neighbor's apartment. And so I remember texting that neighbor and trying to get him to come home, because like I can't get into his place to get the weed. So when he finally came home, he was, nah, man, I don't see it in my apartment, and like walked in my room. He lifted up one piece of computer paper, and it was there the whole fucking time. And I just told him, I was like, I'm having a horrible time. And he goes, well, hold on. He walked into his room, and he grabbed, I don't remember the name of the movie. It was like, it's that movie with that blue monster living underneath like the kid's bed or something.
Oh God, dude!
You know what I'm talking about?
What am I saying?
Yeah. So he do you? I don't.
Corey Feldman.
Yeah. Do you remember he brought that over? He goes, here, watch this, smoke weed, you'll be fine.
Little monsters. Little monsters.
I think that's all it's called. Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I watched that. I calmed down. That wasn't like blowing my. Everything was fine. And then, but I was, awake the whole fucking night.
Yeah, you had a rough night, and I remember not knowing that, like at the time. Like, I had no idea you were having such a bad time. Like, I thought everything was, like, sunshine and rainbows.
I know, you had no issues. You were just like...
Dude, I was just, like, jamming out, having fun,
cheesing the whole time.
Bouncing around, cheesing, dude, playing music, watching fucking rockets take off, dude.
I was
just, like,
sweating my ass off.
Night.
I was, and I remember the next morning we had at those places, that apartment building, I had like a weekly housekeeper, like weekly room cleaning, and this fucking woman, like I guess I didn't hear the knocks on the door, and she just comes in, and I am sitting Indian style in my bed, sweating my ass off, still haven't slept, and I just looked up, and she goes, oh, room cleaning? I said, get out! And she is just, oh, Los Cientos, and closes the door and runs out. Oh my God. And it was maybe like an hour after that we had to have my neighbor wake up and drive your ass to the airport, which I'm sure you had a wonderful time. But
yeah, I mean, without going into too much detail, because this isn't the drug episode yet.
Right?
Was,
no, yeah.
Beyond fucked at the Orlando International Airport, which is ginormous, and I got on my plane. I thought it was a snake flying through the sky. Basically, dude, because like the whole thing was like moving in an up and down snake motion. Like imagine like a wave, dude, almost. Except it was like just like a snake. And then I got back to my home state. And it took, like, my dad picked me up from the airport, and, like, I did not believe for, like, a solid hour that I was in the right place.
Yeah.
Like, things looked so foreign to me that I was like, no, I got off at the wrong place. Like, I had, like, a Home Alone moment, dude. Like a Home Alone 2 Lost in New York moment.
There's there's no way. They would have locked me up. There's no way I would have been able to keep my cool on an airplane. There's no way.
Dude, I remember, like, trying to go to, like, the ticket counter and just, like, I already had my ticket. I just had to prove that I did. And it was the most excruciating experience, dude. Like, I had to go to, like, like I went to like 6 different different airline like counters,
Jesus Christ.
and they kept sending me to like these robots, dude. Which like obviously like you know how I am with robots, so like I was like extremely leery about what these things were telling me to do. So like I was not. It was not a good experience, dude. Let's put it that way.
All right.
It was not.
What a tangent. What a tangent.
Yeah, but it all comes back because, I mean, realistically, I mean, like a lot of people look at, you know, some drugs as their religion, if you will, as their spirituality. Like a lot of people look at that as a big part of their spirituality. So, but that is what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
I don't even know if we said that.
I don't think we did, but at least it's in the title. Like if you clicked on it, you should know, right? But yeah, it's all about religion, and I don't know. I'm not very well versed in all the different types of religions out there.
I'm pretty good. But I'm pretty good with it. I think
I was hoping so.
Because I'm pretty.
I was hoping so.
Yeah.
Ultimately, so I grew up in a church. We were Methodist, and it sucked. I didn't like it at all. When I was about 5 years old is when my parents got divorced, and I specifically remember, like, from then on, like, because now my dad wasn't, you know, with us. It was my, you know, just my mom and my sister and I, and I remember, like, I vividly remember being treated differently from that point on, like less than. It was interesting because it was like, well, I don't understand why I'm like, you know, I was 5-6 years old. Like, why am I now being treated like shit because my parents decided to get divorced? And at that age, you know, that's where I started to not like going to this church. I couldn't honestly tell you any of the values or opinions that they shared because that overshadowed everything. So I couldn't even focus. And again, I was 6 years old, so I don't remember a ton, but I do remember at that point on, I proactively tried to get out of going to church all the time. And finally, you know, when I was by the time I was like 8, I only had to go on like the holiday nights or whatever.
Right.
And then soon after that, I was able to avoid it completely. And so I guess you could say I never gave it a fair shot, but I also never wanted to because I felt like they threw the first punch of like, hey, fuck you. Like, I don't know. Right. Did you go to church?
Yeah. Yeah, kinda. So I grew up in a very strange, like, I did go to church a handful of times, and ironically they were all at different kinds of churches, which I think really, like, shaped my curiosity for theology in general, because I loved it, dude. I ate it up. Like,
really?
You did not have to make me read the Bible. Like, I just thought it was so interesting.
I know, so I know that you have read the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you,
the entire thing, yeah, front to
at
back,
some point, you know, and you might have a better way of wording this now, but I remember, like, back in the day, you had mentioned that you read the Bible, and I asked, like, okay, well, like, what do you think? And you just kind of said, like, it's an amazing story. You know, like, it's a good book.
Absolutely.
You know? And you kind of left it at that.
Great. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I wouldn't want to take away, because, like, especially now, back then I was a little more of a pompous asshole, but, like, now I would not want to take away from anyone's beliefs, and, like right, I wouldn't want to, like, poo-poo any of that, but, like, especially just knowing how important, again, religion is to your overall, like, just, like, what makes you you, and what makes you happy, and what makes you healthy, and what makes you confident, and you know what I mean, like what gives you peace of mind and things like that. That being said, I look at religions as very great folk tales, like kind of like religious texts. Like I think they're great moral stories. I think that you can learn a lot from them. I think there's a lot of lessons you can take from every religion, and there's none that should be poo-pooed because they all have good, moral messages. There were obviously very thoughtful people who wrote those words. You know what I mean? Great writers, amazing writers. That being said, at least growing up, I didn't put a lot of stock into what those things meant, I guess. I would say I'm more spiritual now as an adult and have been than I ever was as a child growing up. I thought it was very interesting. I loved people's interpretations on the different religious texts, specifically the Bible. We're from the United States, so we went to a lot of different kind of Christian slash Catholic services with friends and family. I was actually baptized in a Mormon church, which is pretty cool. That means I can have multiple wives. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wow. What happened? Why do you only have one wife?
I don't know, dude. I fucked up. Well, dude, that honestly, I could not handle more than one wife, dude. I can hardly handle the life I have. That seems like a nightmare. I watched
really
this the last and I'm like, that dude is a fucking maniac.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, that's not my cup of tea.
That's why I don't understand how people have affairs. I can hardly juggle one woman, dude, let alone multiple. There's no way I could have an affair, dude. I would fucking. There's no way. There's no way I could do it.
Hell no. Yeah, because then you got to deal with two sets of emotions that aren't yours. Right. No, not happening. I had there's a comedian. I think it was, and this is a long time ago, so this is, so I don't even want to say the comedians' names, but they had said they're such good friends that they said, I think life would be a lot better if we were just gay together. It's just we can't get past the sucking dick part, but everything else would be so much easier.
Right, dude. Right. I've actually, I'm almost positive we have had similar conversations. Because I have definitely had that conversations with multiple people, dude. I've had that conversation with multiple people. So yeah, I would be surprised if we did not personally have that conversation. Not maybe gay together, just gay in general, because guys are easier to get along with. So I mean, yeah. But I don't know, man. I wasn't that I didn't. But I didn't appreciate religion. I just didn't. It wasn't something that I like I said, put a lot of stock into. But I don't know. I feel kind of like a liar saying that because every night I would still pray. I didn't know for sure that it would work or not, but I wanted to believe it would. You know what I mean? I would still pray for my family.
So that is something I remember doing when I would sit in that church. Sometimes I would go up to the actual I sound like an asshole, but what's the room called where you actually gather? The
chapel.
The chapel,
right?
I guess so. Yeah. So I remember sometimes when it was just empty, if it's just an event or whatever, and then we're there, I would walk upstairs and I'd go sit in the chapel alone. And I remember I would pray and I would say things if you are real, make some sort of noise in 10 seconds, and I would count to 10 and try to hear or make myself hear something, you know what I mean? I specifically remember doing that, just at that young of age, you all these people show up here, but I don't know, I never got a fucking Christmas card in the letter or a Christmas card in the mail, I couldn't. I could not wrap my head around it. But again, I think it's more of those stories, the Bible and things in there to go off of.
Right. And I don't know. There's obviously some historical truth to some of these stories. Some of these people. I don't think scholars would argue that Jesus existed, for example. You know what I mean?
Right.
I would think most historical scholars say yeah, he was a dude that existed for sure. How much of you know what I mean? his stories are fabrication as opposed to, like, I'm sure there's like a highly influential guy, you know what I mean? But like, I don't know. At the same time, it's hard to read the Bible and not feel like there's something more to it. Like, I know that sounds kind of crazy, you know what I mean? But it's hard to read some of these like ancient spiritual texts and they're just like ancient wisdom passed down from generation to generation. It just seems special. You know what I mean? Like, it seems different. Like, it seems, it's not like if I was reading like an 18 or like a 14th century book about, you know, how to plant seeds to make them grow the best in the desert, right? Like that would be different than like what I'm reading. It
so
just
tell me,
feels...
where do you think like all these different religions come from then? Like, how does that come about?
I mean, I think it's, like I said, pretty well accepted that there were people who did righteous things and like were just genuinely good people. And I think it's just like I think most people, and I'm not even saying like I agree with this, but I think the good general accepted theory is like it's almost like a game of telephone. Like, for a long time there was no written records of things. It was just oral traditions passed down from one generation to the next to the next. I mean, like in the New Testament there was some like actual, like they believe there might have been a couple of like first person accounts like of like the people who actually wrote the books of the Bible. But I mean, especially like Old Testament, it was just like stories passed down from one generation. And it's just like imagine like 1,000-year game of telephone, like how much that would change. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like how much that would. So I mean, I think that's like the general accepted belief, but
yeah.
I don't know, man.
Do you think that right now in modern day we're at another point where like I think just based on like, so like there's a church that like I'm working with. I don't, I don't go to church or anything like that. I obviously have nothing against it, but there's a church I'm working with, and kind of by proxy, so are you. And when I go to them to help them out with, whatever it is they need help with, I get to meet more and more people, and I can see this church is it's a lot like these other churches that I see popping up where they're doing their own thing. They're not being so strict the way that I remember growing up in the church that I grew up in. Very strict. Like it seems like the ones coming about now are kind of, I feel like it's another chapter, another bullet point where like, like, hey, we're going to change things up a little bit again. Like, got to modernize it a little bit now. Do you see that?
I do. I don't know that I would go as far as to say like it's another chapter, because like over the years people have adapted their social norms to the Bible, and that's like like into the religious text, but like that's the beauty of the whole thing is like they almost made it so that you could. They say, I mean, like I'm going to use the Bible probably a lot, for example, because that's what I'm most familiar with. Just throwing that out there now, that's probably what I'm going to use the most. Like, but like they say the Bible is like a living book. It's considered a living book. That means like it is almost always constantly morphing itself depending on like who reads it. Like it should mean something different to each person who reads it. Like that's the whole idea of it.
Yeah.
Like it should mean something specific to you. You should take something specific away from it that no one else is going to, kind of thing. The problem therein lies, and this is my beef with church, because I'm all about religion. I love it. I love spirituality. Like I said, I think it's extremely interesting. I think it's great. I am a spiritual person. Like, I think it's great. My beef with churches and organized religion is the fact that then you're throwing a priest or preacher in there who is telling everyone else how to interpret the Bible. And that's not necessarily my jam. You know what I mean? I think that's where we run into problems, right? Like that's how we've had so many issues over the years with like these, religious, like almost religious dictators, like religious, like in different like cults and things like that, even like because people tell other people how to interpret, this book that's supposed to mean something specific to you.
Right,
and like how that's almost like an oxymoron. Like, how can you teach a book that says itself that, like, you know what I mean, like the whole living book thing, but yet I'm going to tell you what it actually means.
Right. So here's an interesting question. Based on that, like what you're saying, in terms of like the book, when you read it, everyone should get a different kind of answer or interpret it a different way. I like that, and I agree with that. And something I never really thought of is that, like, in that sense and in those terms, an atheist should be able to read the Bible and get some sort of value out of it.
Correct. And I think that any reasonable atheist could do that. I think that most atheists, beyond not believing in a God, which I mean, like, is, obviously a key point, like that comes to the whole creation versus evolution debate, which is, I mean, that's its thing, that's its own thing, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But like, beyond that, like, I mean, if you're, even at times in my life where I considered myself an atheist, and going back, I'm almost embarrassed. Seeing how atheists are today, I'm almost embarrassed to say that I was an atheist, just because, like, they're such douchebags nowadays. No offense, but I mean, dude, there's a lot of douchey ass fucking atheists. Like, I'm a big Redditor, dude, and the atheist subreddit is fucking toxic. That subreddit is one of the most toxic subreddits, in my opinion, that you can go on. And like, if anybody listens, dude, I'll probably get backlash, but I don't really fucking care, because you guys are assholes. So, I mean, so any reasonable atheist should be able to look at that and say, even if, like, hey, I don't believe that this is what this means, because this is still a great story, and there are moral lessons to take from this, right? Like, there are still moral lessons to, like, maybe not everything, and you have to take it with a grain of salt, too. I think that's what people don't, that's another thing that kind of irritates me, is, like,
they take
people take
literally.
The Bible word for word, literal interpretation. And
well, that's how you get extremists. That's how you get extremists out of anything, is when anyone takes anything, not just religion, but anything, so fucking literal that, that you're always going to have that.
Right, for sure. And I mean, like I said, there's two problems there, in my opinion. Like, one of them, this book was written thousands of years ago, and social norms were different then, right? Like, even now, you can go to another continent and social norms will be different. So obviously, like, thousands of years ago, social norms were different, and some things that were okay then are obviously, like, we do not find okay now. And second of all, like, that's not how it was meant to be interpreted. Like, especially, like, a lot of, like, again, like the New Testament and a lot of, like, Indian texts and Hindu texts and things like that. Like, they are very much, like, just riddled with metaphor and simile. They read like a poem. Like, honestly, like, you read them like a poem, and I think that's how they should be interpreted. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't interpret a poem literally, right? There's metaphor, there's simile, there's, like, those, you know what I mean? Like, there's those kind of things in there, and that's how we understand it to be read. I think that's how we should approach some of these religious texts, as opposed to taking them, like, verbatim, like, word for word in their literal meaning. So, like I said, I think that's the two problems with doing that. So, I don't know, man. That's what frustrates me. I would say my biggest beef with religion in general is just organized religion. Like, I think that's, like, the churches and that's my biggest beef. Besides that, I don't really.
Well, and that's it's interesting, also, because something that I think we could do as a whole episode topic later on, that we should just touch on briefly here, because it is related, is war, right? So I feel like many wars are, when you boil it down, it's usually some sort of natural resource that someone's after, right? That's typically how that starts.
Correct. Resources, money, yeah.
But the way that it typically is sold to the masses is like they want Americans dead, or they want Christians dead. And they sell it on this whole religious thing. Do you find that to be the same?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would agree that that's not a safe approach or an appropriate approach to how we would treat that situation. I mean, I think that obviously anything that's going to sell a country on backing a war is the country is going to do. And I mean, I think it kind of irritates me when they say like all wars boil down to like most wars are over religion. And I would say that's not entirely untrue if we're talking about like historical wars, but as far as like modern warfare, I do not find that the case at all. You can't tell me we're going to war with Iraq or Iran because they're Muslims. Like, that's not at all why. No. We're going because we want oil.
We want oil. Right, that's what it is. It's a natural resource that we're going after. Like, there's just a way to package it and sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why.
Exactly.
And then you got.
I don't think that's like entirely untrue. There was a lot of wars. I mean, look at the oh gosh, back in the medieval days, what was the Crusades? The Crusades, like obviously, like all of that was based on religious beliefs, but and there's a lot of going even back to like government and money. Like a lot of governments were basically funded initially by churches, you know what I mean? Like a lot of like European governments and things like that by the Catholic Church. So like I said, there are some. I'm sure there's religious motives in some of those like conflicts, but I think that's unfair to say that every war is based on religion. No. And going back, just real quick, touching on it, I mean, I would hope that people who listen to our show are somewhat intelligent, and they would understand that like not all Muslims want to cut your head off, kind of thing. Because you know what I mean. I would hope that that's their understanding. You know what I mean.
I'd go as far as saying that if you did come across a Muslim that wanted to cut your head off, it's probably because they relate you to being an American that's dropped bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb on them. Like...
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, because like this is something I'm actually kind of curious about, just because it's like it's kind of a propaganda point. But I honestly haven't researched it. Like, but they say that like in the Quran there is they talk about like killing Christians, and I don't know if that's true. Is that true? Can we get any data on that?
I don't know. If anybody knows, please email us. SYWSOL at gmail. SYWSOLpod at gmail.com. It's in this description. Or tweet at us too, please, because I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I would seriously be interested to know, just because like you hear that all the time, but I've never taken the time to look. You know what I mean? Like, which seems like something I would have looked up.
Right. Well, I was going to say if we haven't looked it up, then like, the general. American, typical, average America is certainly, not that we're above average, but like they certainly haven't taken the time to like double check the Quran and be like, yeah, there it is. It's right there.
Yeah, right. Because we're totally like, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I'm totally that asshole fact checker. Like, if you tell me something, dude, and it sounds shady, I'm Googling it, like, on the spot, like, while we're talking. Like, dude, like, I am totally that guy who, like, whips out the phone and it's like, yeah, I don't know, that doesn't sound right. Like, I want to, just because, like, I mean, I think nowadays there's so, I mean, like, I don't know, there's a lot of misinformation about a lot of things nowadays. You just have to be, you have to be careful,
Absolutely. Well, it's so easy to spread false information these days, It's never been easier.
That would actually be a pretty good topic, too, fake news, dude. That would probably be, the whole concept of fake news. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, I think that would be...
well, I think there's...
And just like... Or maybe like the media in general. Media, dude. That would be...
Media Day. Let's just call it Media Day.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great one, just because, I mean, they're all kind of a monopoly at this point, and they can share or not share whatever they want, or, kind of change the narrative. Yada, 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 yada.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Let's talk about... let's talk more about atheism and how one may end up as an atheist. And so let me start with, I have a friend that actually, I think currently still lives and grew up.
I hope they still live, dude.
They do still live. And he grew up. He grew up actually around you, but you don't know him. That's the interesting thing. I met him later on in life, working. And that's where it was just kind of like.
Interesting.
That's where it's kind of like, wait a second, you live where? Wait, and we've never gotten fucked up to, like. So it was a very easy bond because he is the same as those dudes that we grew up with. But he grew up with his mom, and I don't remember exactly what the scenario was, but so he grew up going to church a little bit. They would go and they would miss sometimes, whatever, but like I don't remember exactly what the chain of events were, but something happened to his mom, like a little like one after another, like just terrible shit, where she's finally like, you know what? Fuck this. And instead of going to church every week, she sat him down in front of the TV and they would watch an episode of The Cosmos.
Okay.
And that's that, but I thought that was so interesting because it was like,
that is really interesting.
It went from there is a God, believe in God, heaven and hell, so on and so forth, to no, clearly if there is, he's not listening. Like, you need to understand that we're just a blip in time.
Right. And I mean, like, I don't know. It frustrates me because I'm very much like a man. I would consider myself a man of science. I love science. I am like, that's like one of my like hobbies, my pastimes. I follow science very closely. I think it's extremely interesting. Like, I love it. But at the same time, like, I think there's this misunderstanding that like science and religion are like exclusive things. Like, they are like, you cannot have one and the other. You have to choose. Like, you're either choosing science or religion, which I don't know. If you know anything about science, like, then you know that's not true, because
right.
Religion is based on faith, right? Faith in something that we can't see, that we can't like touch, we have no proof of. It's subjective, right? Like, it's based on just a blind faith. And we feel like science, I think the general public thinks science is just like based on like facts, and that's it, and that's all there is. But like, when you dive into the deepest end of the pool, right, when you dive into the deepest end of the pool of any branch of science, it all comes back down to a blind faith. We have these theories that we can't prove yet, and we just have to believe that they are true. Like,
right.
I mean, and it almost seems like science is magic. I mean, like, look at theoretical physics, like the fact that two particles can exist simultaneously in two different places, like, and we don't know where they are until someone actually like views them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're not in a specific place until they are looked at. Like, that's fucking magic, dude. That is, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that is as magic as Jesus coming down from the fucking sky and bringing all the people with him to heaven. I mean, that's you know what I mean? Like, that's why I don't understand. To me, when you get to the deepest like ends of any branch of science, like, you are just, it's basically a religion. Like, you're, you know what I mean? Like,
I always liked the thought or the idea that, when you talk about like, well, where's the miracles now? Like, what the fuck kind of miracle is? I haven't experienced a miracle, but like, in reality, like, once upon a time, I was shot in the head with a BB gun, and I had to go to the hospital, and they like, got it out and were able to stitch my head up, and everything's fine, right? There's brain surgeries happening. Like, I love the idea or the thought that like there's more miracles happening every day now, more than ever, because of because of science.
Absolutely.
And technology, but like, who's to argue one thing or another, just because like you can't point, like you can't be like, well, I prayed and then my brain aneurysm was gone. It's like, well, no, like there might, more might need to go into it, but nonetheless, like if you go into brain surgery and come out alive and well the other side, like that's a fucking miracle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, dude, personally, every day we wake up is a miracle. Like, the fact that we are, like, that's why creation makes such a compelling argument, is that everything had to be so perfect, so unbelievably perfect, that for us to be able to be living on this rock right now, like, the odds were so against us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
That things would just, we would be in the Goldilocks zone of the sun, and like we would just be the perfect distance away, and we would have all the molecules that we would need it on the planet to like eventually come together
like
to create life.
It's things like that to tie me back just to like the alien episode of just like, we're the worker bees, dude. Like, we're the test subject, like, I mean.
Well, see, and now that's interesting too, because again, this goes back to, I think things go in cycles, man. Like, before we believed in religion because we believed there was a creator, and things were so perfect that they had to be a creator, and then we created science, and that explained a lot of things.
Right.
But now we're learning, like, now we're back to, like, look at how many people, like, serious people believe in the simulation theory, and that is just believing that there's a God, there's a creator. We don't know who it is, we don't know how, but it was, if this is all a simulation, then there is a creator, correct? Like, that is a religion, essentially. They don't call it that, but is that not what it is? I mean, like, if you were to look at it from the outside.
Well, I think that's what, that's kind of my point here, is that, like, whether whether aliens are future us or we're just test subjects to aliens, right? Nonetheless, that is still some sort of, religious idea in my mind, right? So there's still some sort of God, or humans advanced so much that they became gods themselves, so to speak. Either way, like that, it's just, I keep wrapping my head around that. Like, I can't stop.
Right, dude. I mean, are we not the gods to the sea monkeys and the sea monkey jar that we created?
Well, see, that's such an interesting one that I think talking about the whole food, chain of food kind of thing is our next week's episode. Something I want to talk about is exactly that. Like, because of our advancement on this earth, like, it's unfair. Like, the whole like idea of like Darwinism is kind of unfair to like put Americans in that anymore, because like we could fucking murder them all, right? So like we can take out any animal we want, more or less. Like, so that's unfair.
Absolutely. We are like saving them. We're their saviors for a lot of animals, dude. Like, yeah. We, I don't know. So here's my question. Here's the big question.
Yeah.
Just because
I wonder.
I think this is going to be kind of. So the big question is, creator, yes or no?
Okay.
Like, do you believe in a creator? I'm not saying God specifically. I'm not saying, but do you believe like creation or evolution? And I'm not even saying that those need to go exclusively. Again, I think that those.
So I was going to say all of the above. I was going to say yes. Yeah, both. I mean, because at the end of the day, like, we're all made up of, microscopic organisms, So,
yeah.
Yes to all the above.
You know what I want to know, dude? Like, something that like keeps me up at night. Like, one of the.
Well, what's your answer? Is yours same answer?
Oh, or? Yeah. I guess I should. I honestly, so I do believe in a creator. I will say that I kind of said before that I didn't become spiritual really until I became an adult, and I honestly, for 100% contribute that to psychedelics. Honestly, like,
sure.
I 100%, like, they showed me, psychedelics showed me things that, like, to me are unexplored. Like, I had spiritual, religious, like, divine experiences on psychedelics, and I cannot explain how I felt, the things that I saw, are unexplainable if there's not a creator. Do I believe in evolution? Sure. Like, do I believe in the Big Bang? Sure. But, like, somebody had to put things into motion, right? Or something. Let's say something. Like, that's what I was going to say. One of the big questions that keep me up at night is, like, sure, we have our universe, but, like, what is outside of our universe? Like, let's say you go to the edge, the bleeding edge of the universe, and you poke your hand, like, what is on the other side? Like, what is out? You know what I mean? Like, what is beyond everything?
Great question. It's a great question. I mean, that's the thing, is, like, it just keeps
like
going.
That keeps me up. That legitimately, like, I lay in bed and think about that. And it, like, disturbs me, like, kind of in a good way, like a thoughtful way, but, like, still I'm like, dude, like, like, there's something beyond everying. There is.
Right.
I mean, like...
Right. Well, and that's, like, that, it makes me think of another thing that, like, I've got like three different things now to figure out how to end this episode. But so the first one, now that you just made me remember, is a lot of the times I can't help. I've my own theory, right, that there are parallel universes out there, and
sure.
And in quite a few of them I've died. And that's kind of like those what's the word I'm looking for? It's those moments in those like near-death experiences that, like, you know, on one planet I did die.
And there's actually, like, a legit philosophical, like, theory, like, thought experiment about that. Like,
really?
There's Yeah. I don't remember what, like, the thought experiment's called, but basically the idea is, like, we, in our parallel universes, like, the only way, like when it almost comes down to, like Schrodinger's cat. Like, if when we look at the cat, it is dead, like, somewhere that cat is still alive, right? Like, at the same time. So, like, the only thing that we can experience is, like, the universe where we keep going. And that might not be simultaneous. Like, we could, like, almost, like, the idea is, like, we jump dimensions based on, like if we are in a dimension in which we die, like, our consciousness will continue onward in another dimension where we are living.
Right. And so
if that makes any sense at all.
So, like, say, like, right now someone pops up and shoots me in the head. Am I just, like, instantly on that next dimension where I'm continuing to talk right now?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes so much
exactly
sense to me. That gives me chills.
That's exactly what the theory is. Like, well, I mean, it's just like a philosophical idea. It's not like a scientific, you know what I mean? It's just philosophy, but and not just philosophy, because the philosophy is very important. I don't mean to downplay philosophy, but like, but it's a philosophical, like, thought experiment that, like, we can only experience the consciousness, like, of the dimension in which we are, like, the one where we live, like, the one where, you know, we're not the dead cat, we're the live cat.
Yeah. Let's see here. Next one. Do you believe that there is a heaven and hell?
I don't know. This is really tough. So I don't know. I mean, I want to, more than anything, believe that there is an afterlife. Like, the thought that, like, when we die, that it's just like turning off, like, a TV set. Like, there's nothing that, like I cease to exist and my consciousness is gone. Like, that is mortifying to me. Like, that is terrible. And I struggled with that a lot before I guess I became faithful. I do believe that there is something more than our, like once we are dead, our consciousness will continue onward. I do believe that. I don't know that I believe that there's a heaven per se. I guess the easiest way to explain what I believe, like, and this is, like, really just, like, I don't know, not doing it justice, but, like, that we are all, like, our consciousness even is part of an energy, right? Like, our consciousness has to be energy.
Right.
Because everything's energy,
I would agree with
right?
that. I would agree with that.
So, like, Everything's energy. So our consciousness has to be energy. So I believe that, like, when we pass away from our physical bodies, that energy of our consciousness is kind of like absorbed by the universal consciousness, if you will. Like we just become part of, like, this, I don't know, like, universal energy. Does that kind of make sense?
I can wrap my head around it, yeah.
And honestly, that was from a DMT trip. I'm not gonna lie. That was from,
I can wrap my head around that.
That was from a DMT trip, dude. Like,
so the issue I have with heaven and hell is that I can't help but think of it, like, in the most, like, generic fucking way, right?
Right, like
take an escalator up to some fucking pearly gates, or yeah, and right. so based on that alone, I'm like, no, absolutely not. But based on something I always, like, end up saying, like, if I'm ever going through a tough day or, like, going through some shit, a line that I always catch myself saying is, I'll suffer in this life to prosper in the next. Now, something along that line would make sense to me, right? So, like, not necessarily suffer in this life, but, like, to do right in this life, like, as best as I can, maybe I'm rewarded wherever my consciousness goes next.
So, I mean, like, I just want to make sure I'm not confusing this with, like this is a little different than reincarnation.
Yeah, I mean, and you could think of it that way too, but no, I wouldn't think that I'm, like, reincarnated into a whole new human being. No, I think that this could even apply into that whole parallel universe complex as well. You know, where, like,
right.
If you just keep, like, maybe whenever you hit, you know, a chain of good luck, it's because of, like, wherever you just passed, you know, whatever parallel you just passed away from, parallel universe, maybe you were, like, doing your best to, like, just have nothing but good karma. So now, like, you're hitting, like, this stride of good luck, and when it's really, like, that's your...
That sounds a lot...
like karma, right?
Right, I was going to say, yeah, that sounds like a lot like,
but isn't that
like Buddhist or Hindu beliefs?
Oh, really?
Yeah, like we can. Oh, yeah, their entire thing. I mean, like, I can't remember which one it is. I don't want to sound like an idiot and say that it's one or the other, but they believe that that when like you live your life. And, like, basically, it's reincarnation, but you keep being reborn until you get to a point where, like, you have done enough good. So, like, you live your life the best that you can, and then you, like, become another person that has, like, a little bit better luck, but you still have to be, like, basically you keep living lives until you reach, like, this, like, you know, like, I don't want to say intelligence, but just, like, this, like, level of... like goodness. That sounds really dumb, but like just like a good person,
right.
And then you get to go to heaven, kind of thing.
Oh,
like,
see, but I don't like that ending.
You...
Like, what the fuck is that then? Like, what the fuck is heaven then? You know, like, I still can't wrap my head around it. No, I know. That's the part I can't wrap my head around. Is like, what is this? Like this fucking hidden door that we've been glossing past this whole, like, I don't know.
I don't know either, man. All I know is that I have been with a lot of dying people, just with my profession, and to see the peace that, like, someone who does believe in heaven has compared to people who do not, it's amazing. Like, how peaceful and content they are with past. Like, they're excited to move on to them, like, to move on to heaven.
Yeah, like,
but
are you ever worried for them? Like, are you ever, like, on your side, like, fuck, I hope it's real? Like, like hoping for them, or...
No, and I'm going to tell you why, again, because I think, like, going back to, like, what I believe, like, this, like, being absorbed into, like, this universal consciousness, like, I truly believe that experience is subjective to what you believe it will be like. And that's why I think near-death experiences are different based on what people like. Because some people will believe like that, like they'll have a near-death experience and they'll just see this blinding white light that they're absorbed into, and they'll see their relatives, or they'll have this blinding white light and they'll see Jesus, or they'll see Buddha. And I think it's kind of dependent on what you believe that experience will be like. I think like I'm going to just say God. We'll say like, you know, the God, the big eye, you know, the one in the sky.
Right.
I think like it kind of makes it like tailor-made to like what's most comfortable for you to experience. So I think if you believe in a heaven, like that's like you will go up into the clouds and you'll see Jesus and you'll be embraced and it'll be great. Or if you think that you're going to become part of this like ultimate just like love that makes up the universe, like that's what will happen to you. You know, I think it's just kind of based on what you want to experience, you know what I mean? Like what you like, what is most comfortable for you. I think that's kind of how it makes that experience for you. It's like, because it wants that, like, I don't know, man. Like I said, when I had my DMT experience, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, because I think, honestly, like, we kind of touched on DMT. I think, like, and I know we'll touch on drugs, too. Honestly, DMT might be its own thing, dude, because that's a pretty, there's a lot of, you can do a deep dive into that one, but, like,
I have never done DMT, just been around people who have. So I don't know how much I'd have to add to it, but I'd be certainly interested in hearing more about it, you know.
It's very, very interesting. Yeah. I am like all of it. I was all about it for a while. But when I experienced this, which I mean, like, just for like a real quick, like, DMT is not only a psychedelic drug, but it's also produced endogenously, or it's thought to be in your brain during specific times in your life, and most commonly it's believed that like during birth and at death and near-death experiences, your brain produces psychedelic amounts of DMT, right? So when I had my DMT experience, all I can say is that I always tell people, like, I met God, and I believe that I did. It wasn't a physical being, but I will tell you, I have never felt like the amount of love that I felt. Like, it was even hard to say love, but it was like that, just like acceptance and peace and warmth, and like I describe it as like I felt like I was a baby being held by like my mother. Like, I don't remember what that experience is like, but that's how I felt like it would be like just like being like this warm embrace, dude. And it was just like, it almost brings tears to my eyes still now, because it was just such like an amazing experience, dude. It was just like probably the most beautiful experience I've ever had in my entire life, dude. It was it was really something else. It was beautiful. It was amazing.
So let me end the episode with this question. Do you know your types of wood pretty well?
I would say I'm fairly well versed in wood, yeah.
What type of wood would you build your boat out of if you had to hold two of every animal?
I'm going to say hickory.
Hickory. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, I think hickory's pretty strong, from my understanding.
That's what I smoke. I smoke most of my meats with hickory. So.
Right, and it does have a very good smell to it. That was another thing I was going to add. And really, I guess if you think about it, like, once it's all said and done, dude, and you've like repopulated the earth, like, you got a lot of hickory chips you can smoke those animals that you brought over, you know, once they reproduce. But also, it's a pretty good looking wood shined up. I've seen a lot of like desks and tables made out of hickory. I think it would be a nice looking chip.
It's true. That's true.
I'm going hickory.
I was thinking mahogany.
Oh, mahogany would be good. Cherry too is my second choice.
Cherry's good. Yeah. Right on.
I don't know like the floatability of cherry, but
I don't know the floatability of any of them.
Yeah, for all we know, we could have just built a boat out of like shit that's gonna sink straight to the bottom of the flood. Yeah.
Like any time, there must not be enough water yet. That's all, folks.
Right. Like, that's it. Just down to the bottom of the fucking earth, I guess, because the whole thing's flooded. But yeah, that's what I would do. So, if you guys have ideas,
yes,
write in, tweet.
Yeah, let us know
what kind of wood.
Yeah, tweet it at us. It is at SYWSOL, or email us at sywsolpod@gmail.com. Please do. Also, please rate and review the pod. It helps us out immensely. I think that's all I've got. And for that, I am Jake.
Bless your hearts, I am Mike.
Oh, have a good one.
Have a good one.